So I've struggled to identify with the whole return to play world simply because the sense of it is challenging for me. It doesn't make sense as to why return to play is this completely somewhat separate thing than everything else that we're doing in training and rehab. And I'm not going to go down the cliche train equals rehab. It genuinely is how I think. Now, I'm not aware of any of my own biases, but I haven't even found that return to play or when players, athletes should return in the more controlled situations has even been much of an issue. So I haven't really dug in to understand a lot of the things that we're doing. To me, it's very, very sensible. I think you have three components. You have number one, what are you currently doing in your training? That bleeds into the next problem of why return to play is even a thing. The return to play shouldn't look any different than what you're doing when you're training. It should be the same. And if you have detailed metrics, the same metrics that you would care about for return to play, wouldn't those be mostly, maybe not all, but mostly the same things that you'd be working on to improve performance to begin with? You're always improving performance. If you're under satisfactory and you're under a minimum threshold, you can call it rehab, you can call it reconditioning, you call it whatever. But I think the problem of why return to play is such a thing and where there aren't any real answers is because it doesn't look the same as training. It's usually managed by somebody who's got some more rehab mindset, not training, instead of somebody that has both, or at least two different humans that are sharing the same thought processes. But if we're not measuring and maintaining records and details of everything that we're doing when we're healthy, then it makes return to play this nebulous thing that's impossible. It's like you're trying to thread a needle and you have the thread, but you don't have the needle because you weren't precise in everything that you were doing ahead of time. So I think the first step to having great return to play is having great detailed metrics on everything that you're doing in training. So then your return to play becomes what your training is. And then you start to learn about how close do I need to get. How close you need to get, though, should also be measured on how you manage load coming back, what your sport is. You do full practice. I'm usually dealing with explosive athletes. So we go, hey, go as hard as you can, but you're only going to do this much. You'll do every third play. You'll only do 20 minutes, and then you will literally go sit down. And that's if there is a high controlled situation. The twitchiness, if you will, of an athlete would also have a big component. I think the biggest thing that is a factor in determining how close you need to get is how much they're actually going to play in a game. Where I think the real problem is this is not a safety issue. If a player were to only play a very short period of time than they would normally, this is kind of how you build and ramp. I think the frustration is actually the sport coach is going to get mad that he can't put the guy in the game. You'll see that with pitch counts, and even then, pitch counts get obliterated when it really matters, and we saw that with Matt Harvey several years ago. Obviously, the work with him over the last several years, dates all the way back to that, where he wasn't supposed to pitch, but the Mets were the best team in baseball, and they just went through it, and he was never, ever the same. I don't know enough of what happened back then, but I do know where he was very, very recently as he tried to come back. So that's number one. Like, what are you doing in your training? Then, of course, what does the research says? And I've recently had done for me an expansive literature review because there's going to be some things that we're doing on return to play. But there's not a lot of information that is solid, hey, just do this and everything will be fine. And the reality is what a lot of individuals are trying also has a learning curve. So if you've never done it before in your training, and then all of a sudden, whether it's a PT or a reconditioning coach or again, whatever you're going to call it, wants you to do certain things that are in the research to show that there's a good idea to do it. If there's a learning curve, meaning you've never ever done these things before, I don't know how valuable that metric is. That's more a commentary on the utility of research. But then lastly, common sense. And common sense is not something that is going to be applicable across the board. So I think those are the three things that we start to review as why is return to play even a thing? Why is this such a hard concept? I think if we somehow put everything all into one big bowl and stir it up, your training should look very, very similar. So if there is a return to play component that lives in the research, that should be what you're doing in your training. So you always know what that individual's top end would be. When we look at external load, I think that's an enormous limiting factor, particularly when you get in the lower level. When you get into youth sports, et cetera, I know there's going to be soccer academies that have GPS because it's culturally standard in that world. But there is so little actual measurement of what they're doing in the weight room or the volume, even at these ridiculous excessive levels of what they're doing in their sport. So when there is an injury, there's nothing to follow. There's no data to follow. Whereas if you just measured something, then all of a sudden you're going to then use the research, which is based on a situation that isn't ludicrous in this youth population, where athletes are just continually overtraining all year. Not to mention the common sense piece. Who said that their training was intelligent in the first place? Who said that their acute or subsequent physical therapy was intelligent in the first place? When everything sucks, then all of a sudden your return to play becomes this quagmire and misunderstanding of what to do and when, because they were constantly healthy and underprepared. And perhaps that led to the injury, perhaps. You can't always say that. But that's the common sense piece. And I also think that we can start that common sense in that acute rehab component, that if we're training for certain pieces, anything, whether it's the words and physiological things that I believe are associated with recovery, doesn't matter. To think that you shouldn't be doing upper body training when you have ACL, or you shouldn't be doing split squats when you have shoulder surgery in a sling, it is not so much to develop strength and those secondary qualities in these areas. It's so you're actually just telling your body, hey, you're allowed to continue to feel okay, and there's no secrets as to why shoulders, knees, etc., blow through these early stages of rehab. So then within a normal period of time, they're moving quicker, and no one's ever going to jump a surgical protocol. No one's ever going to be put into a situation where the movements don't look good or they're not being performed at any type of requisite level. But what you are going to see is when you do reach the next checkpoint, if it is a surgical protocol, they're already brimming with all this physiology and they're able to get to places faster. So to me, all of that is in this bowl that you just stirred up, that all of the things that you would value to get somebody back from injury are the exact same things that you'd be doing to improve performance. There might be some more complex exercises at certain points. There might be increased intensities at certain points, but the exercises wouldn't be different. Because if you know what the maximum is, then you'll have a better idea of how close you need to get. That's the dance becomes easier when everybody is playing on the same song. In most situations, even at the highest elite levels, what they're doing for their healthy fitness, and that might be two pieces. What they do in season and off season could be completely different. Then if there is an injury, what they're doing for acute. Are they doing any training during the acute? Often not. Are they doing intelligent training? Are they doing excellent rehab, brilliant rehab, contemporary rehab? No. They might just be doing passive stuff and heel slides and quad sets where you push your knee down. I mean, all this complete and total nonsense. So then when you do get to a point where you might be medically cleared, or the tissue has gotten to a point of a level of healing, you're in this other world where then you got to go back and do a whole bunch of training just to start to be prepared for what the research might tell you. So it's this big, maybe I should do this on a whiteboard because I'd have arrows going all around and all these bubbles and how they all relate to each other. That's why for me, return to play is hard for me to wrap my head around, where there's entire conferences on return to play. And I just think differently. That doesn't mean they're wrong and they're right, because I value very much what they say. I think I would get frustrated because I'm speaking more theoretical, I'm speaking more heuristic, that they wouldn't, because that's how a researcher would think. There's value in all these different components. I'm just trying to bring them all together. And I think if we did, return to play would be a much easier thing to talk about.